Good afternoon. Today is Thursday, May 25th, 2023. It is 2 p.m. in council chambers at Sandpoint City Hall, 1123 West Lake Street, Sandpoint, Idaho. And this regular monthly meeting of the Selkirk Fire Service Joint Powers Board is now called to order. For the record, I'm Jennifer Stapleton, Board Executive Director, presiding. Also present are members of the board, City Council, Sandpoint City Councilor Kate McAllister, representative for the City of Sandpoint, and Will Gadsby, representing the West Side Fire District as a commissioner. Jim Woodward, our commissioner from Sago Fire District, is not available for our meeting today. With that, Chief, do you want to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, public comments. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone on Zoom? No, we don't. Okay. Are there any members of the public who would like to address the board with any general comments before we get underway with the agenda?
Just generally from the city of Dover. We have a couple projects going on. First off, to start off, I'd like to start a new reporting issue with our council meetings concerning emergency management in general and the fire department in specific. So information that I can glean from meetings like this, put it in a form and enters into the minutes and keeps everybody up to speed on what's going on. A lot of activity down at the marina. Of course, the lake's rising, so that's always a good thing. The firehouse maintenance for Dover. I want to keep up on that. I was speaking at a budget meeting Tuesday for the rain gutters that are damaged over the winter, and get those repaired. And any other repairs will be interested in finding out. If you hear of anything, let me know and get that on the docket. There's a tap project that connects Dover with Sandpoint on that bike trail you see along the highway. So that's going to have some improvements on that. And then in July, there's the historical committees having a 100th anniversary of Dover. We're going to have a flotilla going on and food and all that stuff. So everybody here is totally welcome. And that's about it.
Great, thank you. And Chief, we had heard last month that City of Dover, if there were any budget requests, did you send anything over to City of Dover? Is that in process?
No, not at this time. We did talk, I did have a meeting with the mayor. We did a walk through the station just so they could see what was going on over there. Did kind of talk to him about possibly getting a work group together to just kind of talk about how we could look at funding for more personnel in West Side. That's just kind of where we left it. And then I made a couple of trips out of town, just haven't touched base with him again since that conversation. But yeah, we have touched base and he knows that we're looking to talk with him about that for sure. So.
Okay. All right.
Oh, yeah, Clint Frank, local 2319 union president. So obviously I've gone to both commission, West Side, Sago, and sent a letter to all city council members about some concerns with staffing and maintenance. Reason why I'm here today is I know we're going to our budget cycle. And we want to work with all commission boards and council members to make it work. The staffing issue is a big concern to our employees. Being one firefighter engine companies is just not safe. And we've been doing that for about 3 years now. So we just, as we're looking at our budget cycle, we want you to just start thinking of some alternatives of how we can better staff these stations, especially the outlying stations. It's kind of led to a turnover problem that I've never seen in my career. I've been a 21-year member of the fire department, and you know, we're having, I think, 4 members leave in a year and a half, 3 were captains, that had over 50 years of line experience. So it's just really hard to replace. I know our new firefighters are bringing on are gonna do a good job for our department. They're eager to learn, they're ambitious, and they're starting their careers, but it's just, as we go into the budget cycle for June, thinking for fiscal year 23-24, I just welcome any ideas of how we can better staff our stations. So we run with the 2 firefighter engine company at every station from this point out. I know money doesn't coming out of nowhere, so I get that part of it. We're happy to look at alternative solutions, maybe talk to the county about becoming, countywide fire, potentially help supplement the EMS system, because when they're tapped on a, bunch of EMS calls, coverage just kind of goes away in the city or any outlying area. So we can have backup ambulances out of the station with no intent to ever take over EMS, just help supplement a more robust system. So moving forward, I just like to see our department get back to where we were when we had a chief, deputy chief, battalion chiefs, and better staffing. So that's why I'm here. So if you can help us get to that, we're more than willing to help however we can. But really, we just want to come to work, feel like our rigs are taken care of, we have proper staffing, and just provide service, train, and run calls.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any board or staff announcements?
Nothing from west side.
Okay. Meeting minutes approval, we will table this for our next meeting as Commissioner Gatsby was not here for our last meeting, and we're missing Commissioner Woodward today, so we will need a quorum of those present. On to the chief's report. I'll yield the floor to Fire Chief Gavin Gilcrease.
How's everybody doing? Thank you for coming. I'd just like to start out with in our announcement section, start with career anniversaries. So we have this month, Captain Cordell goes over 24 years of service, and Engineer Troy Badeau goes over 23 years of service. So we'd like to congratulate them and thank them. It's not always easy, but they're in the position where they can make the tough decisions and keep us working. So Deputy Fire Chief update. So again, just to reiterate that Chief Jeff Armstrong did accept the position. He has been, shall we say, working the housing, running the housing gauntlet up here, and has finally decided that he's working with 2 rental agencies right now. And they both say that they have to be on the premises to sign the paperwork. They will not do it digitally. So he has gone at least 4 times with, yeah, I'll do it, set up the flights, and before the flight happens, they've rented it out from under him. So he's just him and his wife decided they're just going to pull the 5th wheel up and rent some spaces and then rent when they get here. So that's what's going on with him. I told him it was special, and I think he's starting to see that now.
Talk with me about that too.
Okay. Yep, no worries. The Sandpoint Station crews have moved over to the Dover Station. As you could hear a little bit earlier, the remodel is ongoing. There's only a couple of small issues that we've run into. One of the main ones was the radio issue. We had the Raycom come in and do station alerting, and somehow they have got the radio tuned to the wrong tower. So they will be coming back to tune it to the correct tower. I mean, it works, but it could work better. So we're going to get them to swing in and take care of that. The incident review. So before we just go over the call volume and stuff like that, I just wanted to share, you guys had asked for an incident type coding and what different incident types mean when we were talking about, I think the 2 mains were the false calls and good intent calls. So in your packet, there's basically just a sheet that kind of outlines the 100 through the 900 series and what each of those can contain. And I know it's a little bit small, so I'm gonna have to work here real quick. The good intent calls could be wrong locations dispatched, canceled en route. It could be a controlled burning or an EMS call, maybe where the party's already been transported, they went POV, things like that. And the false alarms are just basically what those are. Then we have, so just to we'll just kind of review real quick. 100 series is anything having to do with a fire. 200 is anything that has to do with an explosion or overheating, but there's no fire. 300 series is rescue and EMS incidents. I know we focus a lot on what would be considered a 311 and a 321, which is a 311 is where we get there and we assist EMS. And a 321 is when we arrive and EMS hasn't gotten there and we have patient care until they arrive. That's our two big EMS ones. 400 series has a condition with no fire, 500 are service calls, 600 is good intent calls, 700 is false alarms or false calls, 800 are natural disasters or severe weather, and 900 are just special incident types.
So for clarification on this, because I get our police stats every week too.
Mhm.
And one thing I see happening on our police side of things is our 911 accidental calls, our hangups have gone up substantially.
Okay.
Since Apple's done some upgrades to the phone. I think it's and then the watch devices. So it's
Right.
particularly on the Apple products. And we're seeing, I think last week we had in my report, I think we had about 45 of those calls. So
Wow.
are those on the fire side getting reported somewhere in this incident type, and under what incident type?
If it would go under a good intent call, if we, because it would basically be it was a false alarm. It's kind of like an emergency medical where they push the pendant, but it's not really, pardon me, it's not really an emergency. Maybe they were just trying it to see if it worked or testing it or something like that. We haven't seen a lot of those. If we get toned out to them, that's what they would go under though.
Yeah, they're probably mostly on the police side because they're a call in, the hang up, and that's
Right.
a mandatory response for us on police anyway, but we are seeing there's been a substantial increase of those over about the last couple months.
Oh, okay.
They've gone up substantially, and it's honestly week over week, and as particularly last week, we're seeing, because our call volumes were way up. Our hangups, our accidental 911s were way up last week too, so. What did calls look like for fire last week, particularly in Sandpoint with all the traffic that we had in town?
I haven't really seen any like huge, disparity between like last week and a normal week of what we have. I think our plan for when we went through and got all the parking straight, especially with the loss in the 50s. I mean, that wasn't the only event, obviously, that was going on.
Right.
There wasn't like a huge, uptick that I noticed of anything that was like, I would consider like an anomaly that would be out of place. I know we ran a few more calls, but it wasn't anything really to write home about as far as volume goes.
Just for the other board members, that's something I'm looking at as we go through the summer over last weekend. So I get weekly reports from police in terms of numbers of calls. It's the first time ever I've seen us jump way over 200 calls for a week. That's this time of year. That is festival POAC weekend numbers that we ran at Lost in the 50s. So, and we're on that. And so I think that would be helpful for us because, on the Sandpoint side too, when we're heavy with events and if we're seeing jumps in weeks, I think that would be helpful for us to look at as we're looking at policies around special events, impacts, and even fees around special events, that if we're linking to that, I'm particularly interested this year with Festival increasing their numbers and having a number of almost sellouts or sellout concerts where they've added 1,000 more people.
Right.
Just based on what we saw, our call volume this year that we're seeing in police. And again, the 911 hangups are driving that somewhat, but especially last week, that was record number of calls for us in police. So if we're seeing that in fire, and how we're handling special events, what our fees are, what are our impacts on emergency services is something I think we need to take a look at.
Sure, no problem. Like I said, and it's still in the process of reviewing those from this past weekend, but so far so good. But yeah, we'll make sure we get those forwarded over.
And I think it'd be helpful looking across the whole system because we know for those events, we have so many people traveling from out of the area. So we may see it impacting the two districts too. It's not just going to be in our city limits.
Oh, sure, absolutely. So that takes care of the just the kind of the incident codes and how we look at those and how we report those out. You also requested, the board also requested just a look at our ALS versus ILS and BLS. So I threw a little chart together. This is for the month of March and month of April. And I broke it down into the 6 categories. So starting from left to right, it's the categories stand for, so it's advanced life support medical and then advanced life support trauma. And then we have intermediate life support medical, intermediate life support trauma, and basic life support medical and basic life support trauma. And that was just over the last 2 months. That's how those kind of played out. Our ERS system, our emergency reporting system that we use to track records for runs, we do not currently track that in our system. So I went to the CAD at Dispatch Center and they gave us every EMS call that we were toned out to over the last 2 months. And that's how I put that data together. So the numbers will be a little bit off because again, the CAD reports what we were sent to and we report what we find when we get there. So it's but just a record of, this is how we go. So we did have, we had several, looks like several more in March as far as the ALS medical, and then it kind of went down a little bit in April. It was just, and then it just kind of tracked almost the same as far as the rest of them. Basic life support, we don't get toned out to those. We only go to those if they request us to go. And it could have been they got all their units were tied up or they had some shift priority or something like that. But we don't normally just go to those. That is an absolute request. So
Well, that makes sense because that's our one area in April that we're at. So,
right.
Yeah.
Then I also wanted to kind of go over right before we got into the stats. I just ran some other ones this morning before we came in. Just going back over the last 3 months, so from February through April, because we saw the trend on our sheet, on the graph of how we kind of started taking off, and then now we're kind of back down. So even though it looks really wonky on the sheet, like we took way off, I mean, if you look at the numbers, it's just, I guess it's the size of the scale. We didn't really go up terribly, a terrible amount. We actually had, just if you look at the Renco station alone, we had on the EMS side, or well, you can look at the full numbers where we had 20 calls in February, 27 in March, and then we went down to 9 in April. So it's just kind of the normal ebb and flood, I think, of calls. Sandpoint did jump up pretty big in March, and then came down because they went from 75 to 89 and back down to 70. So they did have a large tick, and that was EMS kind of drove that. But at the same time, EMS kind of drove it back down again. EMS was, I would say, probably right around that 35% of the calls for those 3 months. That was about an average for Sandpoint. And it looks like, whereas in the Renco side of it, the first couple months, it was about that 55% average, and then it dropped down to 30%. So it's just kind of the normal ebb and flood. I mean, we did get a little bit of an uptick, but we did just run a lot more calls in general over those couple months than we did in January. So I just wanted to kind of point that out. And then, so we get into the one for this month. The Sagal had 64 calls, Sandpoint had 69, and Westside had 11 for a total of 143. And then you can just kind of see the comparative analysis again on the chart, and then the year to date compared last year to this year of what we were doing. So. If anybody had any questions about that.
On the year to date, so we're up in 23, about 125 calls over 2022.
Yeah, for 4 months, we're about 125 more.
So is that throughout the service area or?
Yeah,
do you-
that's for total,
But
total.
do you have a sense on, in terms of that increase, are we seeing the increase in calls in one service area more than the other? Or are we generally seeing a trend of increase of calls across the service area?
I'm just going off my gut, it's pretty much all over the service area. It's not just one, in one like station 1 area or station 4, something like that. It's the majority of it, I think, is like from the Dover area coming through Sandpoint and into Sagal. So it's got part of each one of the districts in there, so. What we like to call the vortex, where the incidents happen. And if nobody has any objection, we'll keep moving on. Good, okay. So for training, training's ongoing this week. We got a house donated to us by a resident over just on the south side of the Long Bridge. I think there was like a smoke shack barbecue place right there. The house that is actually up on the hill. The owners of that property bought the restaurant section of the inn. And so as they're clearing out, doing the land clear in that house, they basically donated it to us to be able to train in. So crews are kind of rotating in and out. We're training our crews as well as training with crews from north side. We can't burn in there. We can't do any live burns, but we're able to do a lot of training as far as fire ground operations. We do a lot of water supply and fire attack, some search, and also some roof operations in there as well. So we are getting a lot of use out of it, and they said we would have it deep into the summer, I think was their plan. So we're gonna use it, take care of it, but we're gonna beat it up at the same time. So hopefully when, we'll get everything we can get out of it. We had a couple of other requests of people wanting to donate structures for us to burn. And Chief Mitten and myself have gone to investigate both of those sites, and we're not able to train or burn in them. They're just too far gone, and it's a safety issue for us. So yeah, we look forward to continuing to use that. So we have Swiftwater rescue training is still on. We'll start that on the 30th, and it will run through the 1st of June. I'll be meeting with Chief Lindsay tomorrow, Chief Lindsay with EMS, and just finalizing all the schedule and the different locations and what we'll be doing with that. The multi-agency academy, we have been talking about that for a little while, and it looks like we're going to be able to do this. This is going to be in cooperation with NIC, their continuing ed technical side of their school. We have right now it's tentatively scheduled for August the 10th through December the 7th. All the equipment for this academy is going to be provided by NIC, and what they don't have on hand, they'll be getting it from Coeur d'Alene Fire. We have approximately 18 instructors that are going to take the cadets through the academy, and all our local departments here in the county will have priority in sending their folks through it if they need it. Well before we open it up to outside agencies or those that aren't sponsored, they just want to pay for it and go through it themselves. So we're just kind of working on the final. We're going to split the training between the 3 departments. That'll be between Selkirk, Northside, and Schweitzer. We are the 3 that have the most the volunteers and resident programs. So that's kind of what we're using it to design it for. So still looking at trying to do it every 2 years, but this being the first one, we're just going to see how it goes. We're not bound to continue academies with NIC or anything like that. This is just we're going to do this. This will be our litmus test, and then we'll see how it goes from there if we want to continue doing it that route. But this is also going to help us get established. What we want to do is on the off years that we would do this, or off times that we would do this, we would have working with Bonner County EMS, putting on an EMT basic course as well. So everybody can get their fire in and at least started out on their medical. Marine response refresher training is underway. The fireboat is back in the water at its slip, and it'll be there for the rest of the season. Just to kind of continue on with that, we don't really have a designated person or a designated shop really to do any of our marine repairs for any of our Zodiacs or the fireboat or anything like that. So we kind of reached out to Bonner County Sheriff's Office. They, very big established Marine division. They are more than happy to work with us on any of our marine equipment, maintenance, things like that, or if something breaks, helping us to get it repaired. Because we can go to them. They have their own in-house people that are certified to do that stuff. And all the way from electronics on the boats to, refitting the low ends on outboard motors. So they're really interested in working with us because when you're out on the water, we're all one team. And when they send, a Marine unit to an incident, we always like to go in the two boat concept. So that way, if something happens to one, the other one's still on its way. They basically have told us they rely just as much on us as we do with them, rely on them. So I'm looking forward to working with them and like to see how this goes. But it sounds like it's going to go pretty good. And if it's something that it looks like it's going to work out, then we'll get it more formalized. We get MOUs and stuff like that put together. So they will be able to take care of our stuff. And these guys come on and they're there for the whole season. So it's not like they're there just for a month and then they leave. So that helps too. A personnel update, we just one person out of FMLA. We have two new firefighter recruits have gone through the initial recruit academy. They have been assigned to their respective station and shifts. For the current pay period, we are still shifting people around and trying to give them some additional mentorship. When they went through their academy, it was right during the middle of us trying to relocate Station 1 and get it over there. They've been through it, they get it, but the 40-hour-a-week deal is it's reached it, it's not really a useful tool anymore at this point. They need to be on shift so they can really focus their training and get it. But that training is coming along really well. And they've got I think two or three more sets, and I think that's it. And then they're cut loose. So just wanted to give you guys an update on that. Community engagement projects. We did our mock DUI static display and demonstration at Sandpoint High School on the 23rd, which I believe was Tuesday. Here I am on Thursday, right? The event went well. We did have a couple of presentation discussion items that we debriefed, and it's just going to help make that it's going to help us to aid the continuous improvement of that entire display and how that works out. It wasn't anything major. We just had some issues with line of sight, people being able to see what was really going on, being able to drive the message home as you will. We have a community car seat check event that's going to be going on at the East Bonner Library on June 13th. That'll go from 2:30 to 5:30. And then we have our annual kids fair on the 2nd of June at Lilybrook. And that'll be from 2 o'clock to 6 o'clock. Usually we go out there and help them get all that parking lot and stuff cleaned out the day before. So we're looking forward to that. I believe last year, every emergency agency around was well represented at that so it was a good time. And everybody had a blast. So we look forward to doing that again.
Well, there was a good picture today in the Reader, helping out at the Osprey Nest. So that's in today's issue. That
Oh,
came
okay.
from around town.
Okay.
Things happening in the last couple of weeks.
Oh, nice.
Fire service was out there with that situation.
Yeah, I forgot all about the Osprey Nest. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I saw it, everybody was showing pictures that blew up on Facebook or whatever. And I was like, oh, okay. And then all right, we move on. And now it's coming back again. All right. That's good though. Good deal. And that's it for the chief's report.
All right.
I have a question. Are we still recruiting volunteer firefighters?
We're gonna recruit them to get them into that academy. That is the plan. So right now, because we're doing, it seems like everybody around here was doing their own academy, and then this will at least have it to where everybody's going through the same time, that people are getting the same exact instruction. So there's no lapse in material, things like that. So everybody's getting trained at the same level.
So do we have an outreach strategy for that?
We have not started that yet. We were hoping to start that in June, and I worked with Captain Yukich to get that going. So we're basically just going
And
to
the academy
advertise it.
starts when?
I think it'll start in August. And I think the tentative schedule of that is Tuesdays and Thursday nights, and then every other Saturday is how that works out. But as soon as Commissioner Roof from Northside gets me the schedule, we'll be able to make sure, we just want to make sure there's no conflicts and stuff like that. So he should have the schedule to us, I'm hoping by the first of next week. So.
So one other question, speaking of lists, I know for our last couple of hires, we were kind of pulling off the bottom of our hire list. So have there been discussions on doing new testing, new list, or where are we with that right now?
Yeah, I think our list currently has 4 more people on it that we would consider bringing in for an interview. After that, the test board, the scores I think are below what we would, normally look at. And then from there, it's hopefully we can get talking with Clint, Frank, and a couple of the other folks. It's looking like our list was supposed to be good until next spring, but we may need to put something on toward this fall. It just depends on how that goes. We want to make sure that we have people in queue. And then we would also have to look at doing lateral hires at that point. So.
Well, it seems too that if you've got the academy, we're recruiting volunteers and then going out and doing testing and kind of rolling that all together probably could benefit either side.
Right. Right. I think that's the plan, is to try to hedge all those against each other and see what we can come up with. So.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board?
No.
All right. Next is our monthly financial report, and so I'll yield the floor to our city finance director, Sarah Lenz, and I know Chief will be weighing in also, so you're the numbers person.
All right, the fire station wages and benefits. This report is through the end of April, so we are 14.5 of our 26 pay periods into the year, which is about 56% already done. And you can see on the side of the budget to actuals, the percent that is spent. In total, it's about 59.6% spent, various different percentages per station. I think we've covered why on the west side of why that one is up, and then the overtime ones, we've also covered the reasons for that. If there's any additional questions, we asked, there's not really anything at this time for this month to note. That's unusual.
I have a question. The west side, 316, 389. That's our budgeted 3 firefighters for a year. Correct?
Yep.
Okay, so just as a starting place, Clint, if we wanted to man the station with 2 people 24/7, there's our number. So, okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments on this? Okay, take us to JPA.
JPA, same time frame. It is the through April. This one is 50, a little bit different. It's not by pay period, it's by month. So this one is about 58% of the year is done. You can see we're 45% spent year to date, with different various percentages depending on what you look at for that. So there wasn't any big influxes that came through in April. There were several that came through in March, but we already talked about those. Not any big influxes in April. So it really, and the details on of what those expenses were are also attached. So there's nothing I don't think to note this month that I had. I do know at the various jurisdictions, so at Westside and at Sagal, you guys did not get you should get 2 months billings at once. We have had turnover. Belinda Best in my area had last day was yesterday, so we are a little delayed in getting things out just for training purposes. I'm hoping to have that position filled, but hopefully it doesn't impact too much. But you will see 2 months billing at once in this next time, just so you know.
Sarah, now there was a discussion about collapsing some of the tracking by station. So is that
Yes.
on?
So that's on the state, that first report we were just getting
Yeah.
on. We did, and we were gonna, hopefully Jim would be
Right.
there, but he's not. So we did talk about right now, the Sagal and the Carywood stations are tracked separately. And on the back end of it, from a payroll standpoint, that is like tracking a whole other entity. It's a lot of work on the back end, and really, this is the only place that it's shown. I'm proposing that we don't, I mean, even in the budget for the Sagal station, it's not shown like that on theirs, and this would be a Jim discussion and their discussion at their level. So it doesn't get tracked at that level of theirs either. So when I very first was addressing this, especially with turnover in my area, I was like, okay, what's taking a lot of time? You do see also on the JPA, the payroll side of things is very high compared to percentages of budget. And that was where we drilled down to it. A lot of it is spent in here. So I went and talked to Chief about this, and he has more, I guess, to comment on that as well. But that would be my suggestion, is collapsing that into just a Sagal fire district payroll.
Yeah.
We can always pull reports from hours spent by station. So if we ever needed to pull and get that data, I still think we could still provide and get that data from the crew sense.
Right.
And we could always attach dollars to that if we needed to really get a dollar amount from a tracking standpoint. So
And just simply from a budget standpoint, it's not, I mean, everything is in Sigle, it's just one budget. So even though it's broken out separately, it's just, I mean, it doesn't really jive. We look at the the main number, it's all one bucket of money anyway. So you just, you go down there and you check it. I mean, if we needed to know, we could do it by hours. And like Sarah said, if we had to get deeper into that, we could attach, a dollar amount to the hours and then just go that route. But it's not something that we use month over month. It's and it generates like double, when the billing is happening, it generates, they have to go through and generate two bills because one is signed off for Sagal and then one is signed off for Carywood. And then they just both come out of the same budget anyway, so.
I still think, as we discussed, ultimately, it really the feedback needs to come from
Sure.
Sagal on this, on what they want to see. And if you have that conversation with Jim ahead of the next meeting and he's fine with the change, then I think that's the Sagal commissioner that can make that change, because then it doesn't affect the overall report.
Right.
So I think either at the next meeting or having that conversation with him in advance. He's out due to some medical issues, so well, we'll see if that's before the next meeting, but I think that ultimately that needs to be a confirmation from Sagal, so we don't have to go back and reinvent again.
Yeah, sure.
On the west side, we're collapsing the two stations, so. Yeah. Okay, any other questions or comments on financial reports? Okay, moving on to budget review, and I will pass it back down to you again, Chief, and maybe Sarah, a bit on it, on what our talking points, narrative, where we're at with budget review. One other thing I would ask you to address under the budget review is the issue that was raised by the union relative to staffing on the engines and sending out one-person crew. And I know you've been working on addressing that, so maybe rolling that into this budget review too would be helpful.
So just to kind of start out, I'll just kind of go down. I know Sarah's got the some of the numbers that we have for what we're talking about, like the salaries and benefits type of stuff. I'll just kind of start off with the JPA, the operations side, not the personnel side. But just to get into that a little bit, to talk about what you just brought up was, yeah, what we're trying to do is we really want to try to find a way to budget an additional person at West Side and then at the same time try to find an avenue to where we can keep the Carywood staff with two people all time instead of them working down one. So it's kind of like just basically going in and finding money to keep that station backfilled when we can. I think that route, as far as the Sagal side goes, is going to be a little cheaper on the budget or, less burdensome on their budget than trying to go out and hire, new people, because they're just, we're not at that point yet. Specifically, even looking at, Sarah and I kind of talked about, having a floater, that would just kind of go around and fill in at different areas. And our overtime budgets are not at that level yet to where we would have to, consider doing that. The justification of it just wouldn't match up yet. The numbers don't align to say, hey, this is really what we need to look at. But as we keep going and growing, that's something that we're always going to keep in the back of our, the back of our file there to pull out and review, time and again. Just kind of the high level overview right now. The JPA budget, the operations side of it is around the $170,000 mark. We have gone through, individually, as well as Sarah and I talking together, we've gone through this kind of a line item by line item on the items that we do our cost sharing methodology on. So we did have a couple of decreases, a couple of increases, but we also had some that we just redlined and took completely out of the budget because we don't utilize those even though we're budgeting for them. So I'll start with the increases because those are always the best ones to go after first and get this the Band-Aid. We're gonna rip that one off. So this year we did have to add money into the legal fund because next year we have negotiations coming up. So we took that one. I think the last time we looked at it, it was about 13,000. So we added, I think 15 in there on that one to bring that one up. PPE, as far as turnout gear, we did increase that from 20 to 30,000 just due to new hires, and the overall cost of the turnouts per set has gone up. Like we did last year, they went up around 5 or 6% last year after October 1st. So we ordered everything ahead of October 1st to beat the increase. This year we have to realize that increase, but we will try to do it the same way. All the ones that we have forecasted that will need them for the next year, we'll order them ahead of time to beat the increase of October 1st. They absolutely know when our fiscal year is, so that's when they do their increase. Uniforms have gone up a couple thousand. We took those from 13 to 15. Just again, we have new hires coming in, but we almost had like zero shelf stock for if new hires came on or if somebody had something that ripped or whatever, we needed to have someone standby on the shelf. And then as well as outfitting the deputy chief position when he comes on board. We do know that there is going to be an increase in the shared IT cost. We're just getting some of the final numbers on that. And then the deputy position being filled is going to increase a couple of the other line items that we shared, the shared wireless, the fuel for the vehicle, and then vehicle maintenance. So we did make adjustments to those. Some of the decreases we drastically decreased postage. We decreased licensing. We completely got rid of advertising and printing and copying, as well as there was around $5,000 in their schedule for Adobe, which none of our people use that. The professional, that and Bluebeam or whatever, we don't use that. So we just completely got rid of that out of budget. Not sure we would ever need that. So
It's probably gonna sit somewhere else in IT as we're.
exactly.
Yep.
I think one thing I would note for the board members is our recommendations coming down. We follow the CISA guidelines out of the feds, and the guidelines for prevention against hacks and threats and things like that are substantially increasing on us. Therefore, we're having to make some investments and significant improvements on our IT front. We have significantly increased our security across the whole system, our backup structure, both on site as well as externally. And that's happened over the last couple of months, but those guidelines keep coming through. I think also we got our renewal, and I know we're working on looking at allocation of cost from iCrimp. Our renewal was significantly higher than what it was last year. Sarah and I talked about that today, and one of the things I noted, it was optional in prior years whether you wanted the cybersecurity coverage, and that isn't optional anymore. And I think that may be part of what's driving up the premiums. Also, weather created a lot of claims, I know, up and down the state. So, and we had our own, so as a part of those, but that renewal also is coming in pretty significantly higher, but I think cybersecurity may have a lot to do with that. So we're having those conversations, taking a look at that now. But again, a reminder that moving over and having a lot of that coverage for people in particular over at the city was at a cheaper rate than what it was for fire districts, so.
That's pretty much it, so far. I mean, that's just kind of where we are as far as the overall JPA budget. Again, we'll have I'm thinking we're pretty confident we're gonna have that ready for next month to do it in a, a PowerPoint like we did last year, so we can see.
At this
everything.
point, you're working on budget build out with a 2% COLA January 1st.
Right.
Which is in compliance with our CBA.
Correct.
I think exceeds our minimum requirement in there.
It has exceeds.
So the only thing I wanted to add is the JPA split, how we do the weighted average and the splits. We did get the fair market values. We use the average call count like we have in the past. And call counts were pretty steady to or compared to last year. Again, the detail of this you'll see next time in that, like in a PowerPoint. The one thing I did want to point out from the Sago side is that their market value has gone up significantly compared to other ones. Could be all those very nice houses on the water. I'm not sure, but anyways, that does impact, and maybe the build out too out there. I don't know all the details of that, but that does increase their percentage by almost 2%. Reducing Sandpoint's almost 2%, and then West Side was a change of like 0.2%. So that's very steady on the West Side part. And just to remind that does include the Sura and the Dura portions of that in those two cities in the West Side and the Sandpoint, because that to be comparable, it has to have that included in there. Where Sago, when we very first get the numbers from the county, it only is the structure value, I believe, not the land value, and the other two include everything. So we need to get that up to be comparable again. So there is a little bit on the back end of it to get that to be comparable.
Sarah has to request that from the
Yeah,
county. They don't
it's a
just
special-
automatically send it out to
Yeah.
us. So every year she has to request that and they send it over and then the adjustments are made. So.
So, and then just finalizing some of this, the JPA costs, like we were talking about, the IT, the I-crimped part of it, but that will then, with that percentage breakout, will be again thrown into that next month. And we'll give you the same type of slideshow from like we did last year, so.
Any questions or comments on the financial reports?
You're looking to
Our
maybe
budget.
have our JPA meeting a little earlier than
Yeah,
the 22nd.
I'm actually gone. That's the 22nd because the AIC conference is that time, and if council
I'll be gone
president's
too.
going with me, she'll be gone as well. I'm also a little bit concerned about our timeline because we have to get our budget finalized at the city and delivered to council by the beginning of July. And a reminder too, the whole system-wide budget needs to go through the JPA board first with a recommendation to each of the three entities on adoption. So I would propose if commissioners are available, and Tammy, maybe you can follow up with this, that we move our June meeting to June 15th from June 22nd. That in case there is more discussion on budget, a revision with that is something the board wants to see. It gives us a little bit of room before the end of the month if absolutely needed. We could probably participate electronically if that was required. I don't anticipate that'll be the case, but I prefer to give us some room just in case. And it gets us a little bit further away from the holidays and fire season, so.
You want to try to do it at 2, to keep it at the same time?
Yeah, but move it up a week would be my proposal. And I'd ask Tammy if you could follow up with the board members and confirm that. That would be great.
And then, Chief, we might need a special board meeting for West Side to approve the JPA before the end of the month also, so the city can go ahead, right? with yours by July 1st.
We'll still be okay. If it's a recommended to each of the three entities out of here, then we'll go with our finalized budget.
Okay.
Yeah. And then it goes through a process with so we're dropping our proposed budget with city council beginning of July. So the final budget hearing isn't until August. So we actually have the ability, if we had to, we can move around in our overall city budget. It's gonna come at some expense, but it could happen.
And I think, Will, I think that's how we did it last year. I think we did it in June and then we did another review in July because the hearing was in August. Before the August meeting, we did the hearing, or the budget hearing, before the August meeting. And then, because the west side and the Sago timelines are a little bit different than the city of Sandpoint. It's just, it's not a lot, it's just a little bit different, but it all hems on getting the rest of the information from the county in July, but
Yeah, I'm thinking if we move up a week, that shouldn't push you. It's a week and we really should be ready to go with.
Yeah.
I know we're on just overall Sandpoint side. By beginning of June, we're pretty well done with the budget and now we're just finalizing things. So I'm assuming you can get to the same place with the districts.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. This was listed as an action item, but we weren't requesting any action today. That will be at next month's meeting for clarification. And if there are no other comments or questions on that, no further business before the board. This meeting is now adjourned at 2:51 p.m.